Today we have an absolute honor of hosting Mr. Daniele Bolelli. I don't know if I pronounced that right.
You did. Very nice.
A gentleman who does so many things, like from martial arts to being a university professor, a podcaster, an author of History on Fire, which is probably like the best show available on the internet when it comes to history. Like the way you talk and the way you explain history, it would like literally anyone would immediately get hooked to it. Like so we've been like even before we've been listening to a lot of History on Fire, but like recently since we started talking with you and talking about doing this, we started going really deep down into it, and like we really loved every minute of it. So thank you for doing this with us. It's an absolute honor to have you here, and like you're nothing short of amazing. That's
Thanks so
where we
much,
wanted
man.
to start.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Deeply appreciated.
Yeah, so I was thinking we can start with kind of a hot topic right now. I don't know, are you at all into video gaming?
Oh yeah.
You are? Are
Yes.
you following the current situation with Assassin's Creed Shadows? And
I mean, I've seen it before. Yeah, like I think a few months ago, before it even came out, when they announced it, there were a bunch of people going crazy about the, having Yasuke African guy as one of the leads of the game in a Japan setting and all of that. Yeah, yeah, I saw that story.
yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on that because I was going through your History on Fire, and you have one of
Yeah.
those videos about, and I hope I pronounced this correctly, Tomoe Gotsen,
Oh yeah,
like
yeah,
a female
yeah.
samurai warrior. In Yeah, so you're obviously very well versed in this. So I just want to get your thoughts on people's outrage that.
I mean, I think the outrage is bullshit, like it often is with outrage, in the sense that it's. I think the issue is this: is I can see why Ubisoft would go for it, and not even for politically correct reasons or anything, but generally speaking, people dig those stories of cultural contact, where you get somebody from one culture thrown into this completely different culture and being sort of the outsider slash insider. It's sort of the Dances with Wolves story, it's sort of the Last Samurai with Tom Cruise, is a sort of, I mean, they done it 7 million times, usually with a white guy being thrown in the middle of it and nobody ever has a problem with it. But now it's an African guy and it's a problem. It's like, who cares? It's like Yasuke was a real historical character. We know very little about him, in the sense that we have enough to know that there's something real there, but so little for sure to allow any screenwriter or Ubisoft writer to make up whatever story they want, essentially. So I don't really see the problem that much, I don't see. I think it's like that kind of knee-jerk reaction. Anytime these days, if you put like a woman in a strong position, in a strong lead character, the reaction is always like, oh, women who never been like this, or not. It's like there's this, and don't get me wrong, it goes both ways, because I think there has been a heavy, politically correct attitude in trying to make every single woman on screen need to be able to kick the ass of 92 guys and fly around and be the greatest sword woman in the universe. So I get that it's ridiculous on one side, but this is just ridiculous on the other side of the equation of like, what's the problem with having a guy who was really a historical character, who was really in Japan? How's that a big deal?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I don't think it's a big deal, and I think it works sort of in a way where, um, like the new culture started pushing, like one way too far, like making, like pushing so hard for these characters to be certain race, certain genders. I think so. They pushed it so far in the other side. You always gotta have people who push it in the other direction. And now, whenever somebody sees like some person out of place in terms of gender or race, yeah, it's an outrage and it's blowing up the internet. So yeah, just wanted to get your thoughts because I was like, just in the gaming community, everybody has thoughts, everybody's talking about it, but you're the only, like the first person I had the pleasure of talking to that actually has kind of the right to talk on the subject.
Yeah, and I think it's like there's an expression that I use a lot because unfortunately it applies to lots of situations in life, which is like the horrible scenario where I feel stuck in a ping pong game between idiots. And that's kind of what happens with this kind of thing, right? Where you have one bad idea that
Yeah.
generate an opposite bad idea. Rather than saying this idea is stupid, let's take it. You know, there's something to it, but it's taken way too far. Let's go here. The reaction is we are on one extreme, let's go to the other extreme, and then let's go back to the first extreme. And it's like, can we just learn not to be idiots instead? Can we just not take these ridiculously extreme positions that really don't work very well? It's like, what's so hard about that? But of course, that would require skills, nuance, abilities that clearly most
Yeah.
people like to be outraged, and it's more fun to be on one extreme in those kind of debates for a lot of people.
Yeah, to me it just seems that right nowadays it has to be completely one side or the other, whether it's
Yeah,
political, right or left,
yeah,
or
yeah,
woke or non-woke, whatever it is. It seems like world is split in two extremes, and there's barely anything in the middle.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
the middle seems to be like going out of the window really quick. Like we talked about this a lot before because um we spoke, you're from Italy, so
Mhm.
I mean you've probably seen what's happening in Italy recently, and like you have more and more of the people getting outraged by stuff, and they're like on the streets protesting and this, and we talked about this a lot, and he had like Wolf had a really good perception of it, as he just said it, like as you confirmed it too. Like if you push people hard enough one way, they're
Yeah,
gonna start pulling the other way as hard as they can. So like you're getting that, like where you're losing the middle, and like you're either going left or right. Doesn't like not exactly left or right, but you're either
sure.
going one way or the other. There's no middle anymore.
Yeah, and I think it's like even just I think it's important to clarify that is not to say that we're saying, no, the middle position is always the good one. Not
Mhm.
necessarily, but it's a balancing act, right? In some issues, something may be 90-10, where some side is clearly more correct than the other, but maybe not 110. You know what I mean? It's like
Mhm.
90 is good. Tweak a tiny bit, you know? In some cases, it's 50-50. In some cases, it's 70-30 the other way. In some cases, I think like it's that ability to be able to really just look at the situation, look at what various answers are, take the best from multiple answers, see how you can combine it in a way that makes sense. But it doesn't mean you always have to be on the dotted line of 50%. You know, it's kind of like, I remember I saw this a lot, which I thought was funny as a criticism of more centrist ideas. And I was like, yeah, that makes a good point. That is like, you know, if you have one side that say, let's do a genocide, and another say, let's not, the good compromise is not to do like a half genocide. You know what I mean? It's like, so on some issues, I can see how, no, in some issues is 100-0, you know, but not very often. Most of the time is somewhere on that spectrum in terms of balance.
Yeah, like it's exactly like you wrote in one of your books where you were like explaining like you should always question everything, right? That's I love your philosophy. I know you apply it to martial arts and your life in general. I love it how you explained it, where you should question everything, but don't go to the extremes. Like there are certain things that you accept,
Yeah.
but still like you question everything. Like I love it because like when I read it, I was talking to him like I loved your religious approach because it's really similar to something that I believe. It's like I do believe there is something, but I don't think it's something that anyone can understand, neither of the like mainstream religions or any religion really. But I do believe there's something, and I do question what that something is. But still, like I'm like I know there's something, but I'm not sure what it is, and I'm
Of
trying
course.
to find out. And I think that the mission is to find out what that something is, and I love that the way you explained it. I really loved it. Like that was something like the closest that I ever found to like my personal opinion. You just explained it much better than I could ever explain it to myself.
I'm glad. I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. So we also wanted to ask you on another thing, like that's something that's hot right now. Like I don't know how much into it you are, but like I don't know if you caught your attention. Like everybody's been talking about some study that they found something under the pyramids in
Oh yeah.
Egypt.
I read. Yeah, I saw
I don't
that.
know if you had the chance to like see that, and like we were like stoked. We had like he called me. It was like 3 a.m. in the morning. He's like waking me up, dude. I don't know what's going on. Like, you need to see this. And we were like, we absolutely couldn't believe like what we were seeing. So, but then we saw like other people saying that it might not be exactly that and this and there. And like, but
That's
it's,
kind of where it's at right now, right? We don't know. It's like it's cool. There could be something interesting, but we still don't know, I think. So
Mhm.
sort of like my reaction was like, oh, cool, that's interesting. In probably about 3 years, we'll have some better answers about what's up, you know. Right now is more of excitement for possibilities, but not because we really know anything.
Mhm.
Yeah. Do you mostly focus on like religion history? I mean, obviously, I know you also like dabble in history in general, but do you have a like a specific field of history that's like your bread and butter?
No, I can't. I mean, sure, there are a few things that I clearly have hammered much more than others. Ultimately, I tend to like anything where there's a great epic story, and then I research whether it's 5,000 years ago or whether it's 20 years ago. I don't care. Any place on earth, any time type of thing. However, there are some things that I've studied a lot more than others. For example, I've done a ton, even on History on Fire, I've done a ton of work on Native American history in the 1800s, particularly on the Great Plains. So I've done a bunch of that. I've done a bunch on combat sports. I've done a bunch on, I seem to have a certain passion for outlaws, pirates, and generally law breaking. So there's a lot of characters like that. I'm not like a super expert or anything, but I definitely have gone fairly deep on Japanese history. You know, so there are some that I'm definitely more well. I've done a bunch about ancient Rome. So there are some things that I'm definitely more well versed than in others. But I do like pretty much anything where I can find a great story.
So do you just like kind of go where your interests take you,
Yeah.
or yeah? So pretty much just stumble upon something and start researching, right?
Yeah. And in some cases it's easy because I may know already a lot about it. In some cases, I may start from pretty much from scratch, which of course is gonna be harder because I have to research a lot more in order to get to a place where I feel that I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, amazing.
I was wondering like, so if you would have to say uh, is Professor Daniele a professor? Is he a martial artist? Is he like, if you had to like choose one thing that you think defined you the most throughout your life, like would you say you're a historian? Would you say you're a professor? Would you say you're a martial artist? Or do you think it doesn't exclude each other? Because it's a really
I
fun mix of things, you know?
Yeah.
Because like usually when you say a professor, you think of someone who's like, you know, usually not very like sporty, not into sports too much, especially not into combat sports. Like, you know, you said it yourself. Like when you talk to your colleagues, they're always like, yeah, so this guy, he's a combat sport, like combat
Yeah.
sports athlete, and he's at the same time he's a professor, and they have like this thing. Like it's a really strange mix.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an awesome mix, but it's a strange one, like unconventional.
I think that's my approach to life in general, that I don't like much in the way that we're talking about religions or politics or anything. I'm not a big fan of identifying myself as any one thing because I find identity to be a prison. Now, most people like identity because it gives them a structure, it gives them a sense of meaning, it gives them a set of prepackaged values, it gives them all this stuff. For me, I find it to be a cage because it doesn't allow me to be other things I want to be. And so I like to be many things at once. I like, to me, it's like, should you choose to be more physically driven or intellectually driven? That's a trick question. I want both. I want, I want to be able to study this field, but also this other thing. I want to be able to. So while I understand that there's some degree of specialization is important to really know what you're talking about, I also feel that the more like all of these things, all the different fields that people can be involved in are like languages. They are things that allow you to touch life in a slightly different way. So in an ideal world, I want to be able to touch as many as I can in as many ways as I can without sacrificing depth. So obviously, I'm not going to be able to do 30 things at super crazy depth, but I may be able to do 5 or 6 or 7 or something. So that's kind of how I approach things. I never want to feel stuck to one thing and one thing only.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's like, I mean, I really love the versatility that you bring to the table because, like, I was really talking to a friend of mine earlier today. And I told him like, today we have a like show we're recording with a person who's actual professor and a martial artist, and he's like, wait, he's a professor of martial arts? No, he's an actual historian, a professor, but he
Right.
also does martial arts. And he's like, that's strange mix. Like,
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
and I really like that. I always love like the odd people, the odd things, in life. Like when somebody's out of the box, as you'd like to
yeah,
say.
yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
Do you still train martial arts like on regularly?
Yeah, yeah.
So what are you
I
training right now?
primarily jujitsu. We start from stand up, so we wrestle a bit. Wrestle, jujitsu, little bit of Muay Thai. Mainly those things, and then I teach my daughter primarily. Sometimes my lady. We work on some arts that are more self-defense focused. Because of course, combat sport. I mean, I love combat sports. They are great, and I think they give you excellent tools for self-defense. But self-defense is also different from combat sports. So I also like to train things that take it in a different direction a little bit. So those are the main things I do. Like little bit of this one style that I train in that was like Chinese system, more focused on self-defense, but then primarily judo, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai.
I also saw that you like Aikido and
I
right?
mean, I never, the thing about Aikido is I never trained Aikido formally. And I do find that so much of the way that Aikido is taught is just completely divorced from reality in the sense that it's cool energetically, it's cool aesthetically, but you know. mm, However, there are some techniques that I think can work. And people sometimes have thrown away the baby with the dirty bathwater there because, like, for example, there's this outside wrist lock. That's a classic Aikido technique. The way they set it up is ridiculous. It's never gonna
Yeah.
work. It's based. I mean, I understand where it comes from. It's based on somebody coming at you with a sword. Nobody's gonna attack you like that, empty-handed, of
Yeah.
course. And they do this gigantic movement and reverse it, and all of it is beautiful. Never gonna work. But the wrist lock itself can work very well. I use it all the time in wrestling. I'll just grab the wrist. They are watching for my head. They are getting distracted, and I apply it like that. So I think there's some cool stuff in it. But as a system, yeah, probably not the most workable thing ever.
Yeah, a little bit of trivia. We are from Serbia, and one person here from Serbia actually, I think it's now officially considered a Serbian martial art, which is translated to something like real or realistic Aikido,
Yeah,
which
that's cool.
basically takes Aikido and tries to implement it more and like with removing these like defense from sword strikes and whatnot. I personally haven't got too much into it, but yes, like we are from Serbia, and there's a Serbian martial art called real Aikido, and yeah, there are still people dabbling in it, and I think it's cool. I don't think necessarily every single move needs to translate into like a UFC cage. So
Sure. Agreed. And it's true that it's easier to apply not in a sporting contest than so for example, like people, especially people on the street, people grab a lot more so than they would be. And so some of those Aikido techniques are gold in that case. Actually, matter of fact, that's funny. Now it came to mind. I actually did use one for real in life once. I used it was pretty funny because the moment when this guy grabbed my wrist aggressively, I was like, "Oh my god, I've done this like 7 zillion time in the dojo. Let me see, let's try it out." And the guy just went down. Like I was like, "Oh my god, it worked really well."
Is that to me?
Yeah, like I absolutely agree. I actually think that Aikido has more of a purpose in a real life situation like that than it could have in an actual, let's say, I don't know, we're using an MMA, like MMA reference as like something that's like, I don't know, I don't want to say like the master of all combat sports, but like a place where we can use anything, right?
Sure, sure,
So
sure.
I don't see it in that setting because like I used to train MMA and like we had like this Aikido guy coming to us and he was like, I remember like it was yesterday, we had like this one fighter from our region here who's an actual really good fighter and he's like, the Aikido guy was like, grab my wrist. He's like, why would I grab your wrist? And he's
Right,
like,
right, right.
well, grab it so I can show you. And he's like, but I've never grabbed your wrist. Why would you
Yeah,
grab my
yeah, yeah.
wrist?
Of
And it
course.
was like, but then when you say it, like when you have a practical open world
Yeah.
use like that, that's when it actually makes sense. Because usually, like those things, like conflicts in real life, usually, I mean, I'll say like 95% of the time, people are not actually combat sport trained.
Yeah, yeah.
So
No,
it's like
yeah,
it's
they're pretty
usually
open.
swingy,
Yes.
grabbing things that you
Yeah.
would never use. So I guess you're absolutely right there. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a difference there for sure.
yeah, from my own experience at least, like the most altercations I ever had were in like crowded clubs. And I trained MMA, I trained jujitsu, I trained a bunch of different things, and it's always either like a push or like you rub somebody's shoulder and then it's like, oh, what you're doing, it's like at arm's length. And I'm always thinking like, sure, yeah, I train jujitsu, I train some wrestling, but I'm not like, if somebody tells me like, oh, what are you doing? What's up? I'm not going to double like take down him in all of the
Right.
club, right? So
Of course.
yeah, every I think everything martial arts has an application. It's just not a matter
Yeah.
of finding it. Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed.
I also wanted to ask you, like, you talked a lot about and you wrote a lot about the philosophy behind martial arts. Do you
Uh-huh.
think like so let me rephrase this. Do you think that philosophy from martial arts is something you can apply to real life?
Yeah, I think, I mean, that to me is the part that gets more interesting because martial art, I mean, realistically, unless you have a particular profession or live in a really rough neighborhood, how often, I mean, if you're purely using it for practical purposes, how often is that gonna be in life? You know,
Yeah,
probably not much. So it's
almost
really not
never.
worth putting that time and energy into it if that's all that it's
Mm.
about. One can say, oh, it's a cool physical training, and that, sure, there's that. But to me, one of the things that interests me the most is what it can do to your mind. But of course, that's not what's taught in the classes. You have to be smart enough to take some of the things that you learn experientially, physically on the mat, and then translate them to outside of the mat, which is, you know, is definitely not an automatic process. You know, there are people who are absolute gods on the mat and they are complete shit human beings when they walk out and they clearly haven't learned anything other than. So it's not definitely not an automatic process, but to me is one of the most interesting parts. And you know, just to give an example so that people have an idea what we're talking about, things like I mean, one of the things that you get to be exposed in martial arts at any level is that you're gonna get your ass kicked inevitably as you learn, and even when you get good, because there's always somebody who's better than you.
Yeah.
And you know, there's in those situations where somebody's really squashing you, and you realize that they have your number, that you have no chance whatsoever of turning it around. It's very normal to want to check out, to want to say, okay, this sucks. I want to be out of here. And so to actually be trained in a situation where you have no realistic hope of quote unquote winning, of coming up on top, of reality turning the way you would like to, and yet staying in there and fighting anyway. Talk about parallels to life. Because I mean, in life, there's going to be plenty of situations where it's not going to work out well. It doesn't matter how hard you try, it doesn't matter how hard you work. There are certain things where life will turn pretty unkind, stuff will turn pretty ugly, and there's not much you can do about it. And yet, you know, what do? You tap out in life? You can't. So it's you are gonna have to stay in a crap situation, getting the shit beaten out of you, while at the same time not giving up mentally. And I think there's something incredibly powerful about being able to stay present and even strong in a situation that may be completely hopeless, you know? It's not something that's easy to learn in many other contexts.
Absolutely. You just sent chills down my spine, like saying that. I absolutely agree with that. Cause like I remember, um, even when I trained MMA, I was never a big fan of jiu-jitsu. My take on jiu-jitsu was I just need to know enough so I don't get caught. Like, and I avoid ground if as much as I can. So we had a friend of ours who's like now he's a black belt. He's actually licensed by Eddie Bravo himself. He's like the head of his school here in our country. And I remember like he just started training. He was like in it like for 2 or 3 years. And he was like, let's roll on the mat a bit. I was really confident, really confident. And then it ended up being really bad for me because like I started throwing him around, wrestling for as long as I had energy. But like 260 pounds don't have a lot of cardio, right? So I
Sure.
was throwing him around, like ragdolling him, and then I remember the moment like it was yesterday, like I was falling down on all fours, and I'm just like trying to turtle. He's climbing on my back, and he's like, "So what now?" And I was like, "God damn it! I was hoping we're not gonna get here."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that's like that exact thing. Like he survived, and
Sure.
now I'm surviving.
Yeah, yeah, of
So that's
course.
why.
Of course.
I really love the analogy. We also had like we had an idea with like a few questions that are a bit like out of the box questions, but I would really love to ask them
Yeah,
to
sure.
you because like
Sure.
you're a historian and martial artist. So one of them is like this might be like a strange question, but let's see what you say. If you could settle one historical conflict through a single martial arts match, which two figures would you put up against each other?
Who do I want to see kill each other? There's a lot. I mean, I'm a big fan of. I think I wrote a Substack about it. I wrote this thing, a concept that, I mean, is a joke, but it's not, where I say the concept is gladiators for world peace, which is like anytime you get somebody who has, want to take it to the next level, is like if, I don't know, take Netanyahu and the head of Hamas want to climb in a cage we give them an axe each, and they start trying to chop each other up in the cage, and the winner takes the prize. I much prefer to have that kind of war compared to
Mhm.
wars where civilians get slaughtered left, right, and center. And inevitably in any war, there's more people dying that don't want to have anything to do with it than the ones who actually want to fight. So I would be a big fan of overall of just you want to fight, great. Let's get you guys in the Coliseum. Let's hand you a sword each, and the rest of us can sit in the stands, drink a beer, and see what happens.
That would be absolutely awesome. That's a great idea. That's a great idea. So, do you have like anyone in mind, like any two of the historical figures? Don't you
No,
don't
but
even
I
have to
mean,
like keep them in the same time frame. Let's say like any of the two people which you would just love to see a fight.
no, because I think it's like my approach is more than wanting to see them fight, is more there are dangerous psychopaths who run the world, and I would love if they kill each other rather than involve us in their bullshit. So it's take just about every other famous historical figure who has run a nation and in the process done horrible things to human beings. I would love to see them in the cage with axes.
I take my hat off for you, Professor. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Like I love just as you said, like I think it was Winston Churchill who said it. I'm not sure. Like I think he said it. Wars are something where young people die, or argue. Young people who don't know each other kill each other over the words of old people who know each other very well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's basically like I think that's. I couldn't agree more with you. So I have another one. Is there a lesson from martial arts training you'd actually recommend ignoring?
Mm, trying to think. Mm. I mean, I'm sure if we think about it long enough, something would pop up, but nothing that comes to mind immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have anything in mind in that regard?
Well, I was thinking about it a lot when I wrote the question. Like the closest I got to it, like um, at least at least when I trained, I always had a trainer kept telling me like keep your composure, don't over exaggerate things, don't get like wild, don't. But sometimes I think you should get wild.
Oh
Sometimes
yeah.
you should let yourself like. I think sometimes not just in combat sports, but also in real life. Sometimes you need to, as you say, YOLO it. Like sometimes you need to be like double down on it and just go with the flow, see how it goes and like risk it. So that's something the closest I got to it. But like,
Yeah, I think that's part of the balance we're talking about. Is
mhm.
there anything wrong with being calm and composed and in control of your emotions? No. Is there anything wrong sometime in letting your emotions drive you, which gives you more power and more energy, whether through anger, whether through. No, there's something valuable there too. It's a matter of figuring out what's the right balance. And the balance changes in each situation. It's not going to be something where there's a fixed balance in all cases. It may vary tremendously. And also, it depends on one person to another. It depends on context. It depends on a bunch of things. To me, what you're describing, that's life right there. Is figuring out that it really is a balancing act, but it's a tricky game because it changes constantly. And there are times when I don't know, like I think that maybe showing emotions and being more vulnerable with your emotions is actually a good thing, and I tend to argue for it. But then sometimes I may be doing it to the point where no, now I kind of need a little more stoicism because I'm becoming too whiny actually and too reactive emotionally and too all that. And so it's not an issue of we should always be stoic or no, we should always show emotion. Is let's figure out in each situation what the appropriate balance is. And that balance is going to shift dramatically from one context to another, which one is the correct one. And so if I'm still applying the one that was correct yesterday to the new situation today because it worked yesterday, well, that was great yesterday, but today is a different context. And no, you need to you need to think it again and tweak it a bit.
Yeah, you're really striking me as like super chill and super calm person. So were you ever in a situation where just the emotions completely took over?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for me to keep it cool because I kind of go from 0 to 100, so there's not a whole lot in between. So I'm just like, okay, let's be diplomatic, let's be peaceful, let's avoid conflict, let's try to be nice even in this. Let's do. Okay, now I want to kill you. It's like there's not a whole lot in between. So since that now I want to kill you is not a great response in most situations, I go heavy on the other end to try to mellow it out. And that's probably why I typically have some of the most violent dreams you could possibly imagine, because I think I keep it in check so much during the day that sometimes my mind is like I remember when I was young. You guys ever watched the TV series with John Berntal, The Punisher?
Ah, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So when I watch The Punisher, it's funny. I find it like the most relaxing TV show ever because the thing is, there's a one, sometimes it's like the characters on the screen is doing something that you're like, why would you do that? You should have
Yeah.
done this. And so there's a clash between what you think would be good and what the character does. When I watch The Punisher, I'm like, oh, that's just exactly what's going on in my head. There's a 1-to-1 ratio between his behavior and my thinking. So we are, so yeah, in order to avoid going the Punisher in day-to-day life, it's important for me to work on keeping it cool.
Yeah, I never actually thought about it that way, that in your dreams, you're kind of living out what you're suppressing during your
Yeah,
waking hours. Yeah, but that's an interesting. I need to rethink my dreams.
yeah, yeah. No, my dreams got a little too intense. I mean, it's cool. I feel totally fine because I'm not doing anything terrible or that I would be like, oh my God, you did a horrible thing. But they do get pretty damn violent.
Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe you're so chill because you wake up in the morning and you're
Yeah,
already done
exactly.
all these things.
Maybe you finish the
That
Punisher
maybe.
part while dreaming, so you can be chill when you're in real life.
Yeah, exactly. That could be.
So I was wondering, like, you're big on philosophy. like philosophical way of thinking. So I was wondering, like, what's one philosophical thought or like approach to life or whatever that you knew from the get-go as you read it or thought about it or
Sure.
found out about it, that it was absolutely right, but it was the hardest one for you to implement into your real life?
I think is like there are many, but there's definitely one of the form of thinking that most resonates with me is Taoism. Now, Taoism, when you read it, like you read the Tao Te Ching or something, it's complicated as hell. And depending on what translation you're reading, it's like, what the hell is it trying to say? You know, it's not always the easiest thing to grasp. But when you do, when the images click, or maybe somebody rephrase it for you in a different way, the ideas of Taoism are so, to me, are like I look outside at life and I see Taoism in everything, because it's not something you have to believe, it's not something you need to have faith in. It's more like, okay, this is how the universe works, this is how. And so the principles, the ideas then are not that complicated. Like once you get them, they are pretty clear what they are. The trick is you have to adapt them constantly. You have to apply them. And just because you apply them well once doesn't mean you're going to be able to apply them the next time. And so I think that's it's like surfing, right? It's like once you learn how to surf, well, then you have to surf. You know, the waves come, and just because you have taken 30 great waves in a row doesn't mean that the next one that's giant and different, you're not gonna fall horribly and become food for the fish, you know? It's like, so it just becomes a practice more than an idea.
Yeah, can you give us a little small idea from Taoism, just so we can kind of get
I
an
mean,
idea?
like some of the stuff we're discussing already, that's Taoism right there, right? Because this whole idea that, like, Taoism is all, there's this notion that all of the world is divided in yin and yang, an energy that's more softer, yielding, more subtle, one that's more aggressive in your face, what we think of as strength. And Taoism is not arguing that one is good and one is bad. It's saying they're just opposites. It's like saying cold and hot, man, woman, winter, summer, light, darkness. They are just energies, right? That they are on opposite end of a spectrum. And the question is how most things in life require you to figure out the right balance in any given situation between those two opposite energies. And again, the balance may be 99-1 in some cases. So it's not always about walking the straight line, but it's about figuring it out and adapting it. So I give you an example in practical terms. Maybe you have kids and you read that you should have a certain approach to kids. Maybe you are emphasize discipline and you're on their ass and you do this and that, and it works fantastically for one kid. Then you have another kid and you apply the same model that worked great with your first kid, and it doesn't work at all because your kid is different. They thrive more on, they need more trust, they need more freedom, they need you to not be constantly micromanaging things. Is he right? Is he wrong? It's right for this kid, and the other one is right for that kid. So it's not a dogmatic approach of there's one answer that's always the right one. It's figuring out what the right balance is, you know? And so to me, that's in everything, in every aspect of life, there's those kind of discussions are interesting, whether you're talking politics, religion, how to raise kids, how to do martial arts, the way you cook food, like literally anything you can think of is, I see applications of this stuff.
Yeah, amazing. I just noticed, looks like we're running a little bit over because I know Daniele has work to do. So did you have any more questions or should we?
Like if you have time, I have just a few more. I'd
Yeah,
love to
sure.
hear you. Like, but we don't want to like you. Okay, so this is an interesting one. So, what's a philosophy you once loved but have since rejected, and why? Is there one actually?
I wouldn't say there's anything along those lines. I think there are some philosophy that I like up to a point, and then I see how they can turn into a poison. So, for example, I did a couple of episodes on History on Fire about the life of Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, listen to them.
There are things about Stoicism that I like a lot. that I think are necessary and important. There's also a lot of people who fall in love with Stoicism, take it so far
Yeah,
that to
amazing.
me it turns
I
into a
just noticed
poison.
also
It's
we're
like
running a little
rather
bit
than
over
being
because I know
about,
Daniele has work to do.
staying
So, did you
center
have
with
any
the
more
fact that you
questions or
don't
should
control
we
much in
wrap it up?
life, so not constantly
Sounds pretty
responding
exciting.
emotionally to
Oh,
things, which is
Uh-huh.
great. They take it to become emotional repression. And I'm like, no, that's not the goal here. That's a terrible use of what's a good idea. So it's not so much that I fell in love with one philosophy and then decided, no, this is crap. It's more like there are some philosophical ideas that I think are brilliant, but they can be taken too far and they turn into the very opposite of what they are supposed to be.
So basically, back to what you said the first time, like when we just began, like any extreme is a problem. Like
Yeah, yeah,
always try to keep it.
yeah. Yeah.
So I have another one. I promise this is going to be like I have two or three more, and we're letting you
Yeah.
go. We're not going to waste any more
Of
of your
course,
time.
no problem.
So yeah, here's this one. If you had to spend 1 year of your life fully immersed in another culture of life or lifestyle, ancient or modern, what would you choose?
Places that I like a lot. There are a few. I guess like one thing that I'm super fascinated with, even though you're talking a very hard life, I love anything that has to do with before civilization as we know it, before farming, before like hunting and gathering life in what essentially are prehistoric times. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not that I'm saying this would be the life, because I'm sure it's rough, it's difficult, there are 10 million things that can go wrong, but it's a kind of lifestyle that fascinates me. Among other reasons, is because that's 99% of the history of humanity. That's what we have lived like. So I think there's a lot that carries over in how we view the world. And there's a lot of our modern problems that come from the fact that we lived in a certain way for almost the entirety of time. And now, in just the last 10,000 years, we have been changing at a crazy pace and we are not quite fully adapted for it. So that would be something that I'm definitely fascinated with.
Yeah, I agree. Like whenever I'm overwhelmed with like political issues or what I see in the news, like protests here, wars there, whatever, I was kind of imagine in my head like imagine if I just had a small village and I lived in a small hut and I had like my clan of people. Then only thing I got to do in the morning was get up and go chase an antelope and bring it back for food. And I'm thinking like I'm certain like though that kind of life is hard for sure. Like you could get eaten any given day, but also I think psychologically I think I would be way more happy than I am right now, trying to deal with all of
Right.
these political issues and
Yeah,
viewpoints
yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff.
I can definitely see that.
Yeah, so another one that I have for you is like, is there one historical person like who you think is misunderstood? It doesn't matter if we all think he's great and he was actually a villain or the other way around. Like, is there someone you would like point out who's absolutely misunderstood by the majority of the people today?
I think when we think of most of the people that make the history books, that become the important figures in history, and to some degree or another, generally speaking, there's a sense of, oh, they were great characters because they were the world builders, they were this and that. Most of the time, they are absolute psychopaths. Like when you look at like from the Alexander the Great to just about every other major political military figure you can think of, these were not pleasant human beings. These were people who did horrible thing, being driven by this desire for partially is ego, partially is greed, partially is like so much of what's the history of humanity. Usually when you look at a history book, more often than not, it's politics and war. And when you look at who's running the business in politics and war, they are some of the worst human beings you can run into. That's why sometimes the history of humanity is like seems like this terrible thing. But then you look at people you meet on the street, they're like, no, there are plenty of great people. They are just not the ones who are going to be the great of anything, because they are not gonna be the world conqueror types. And so I think sometimes we give some of these historical figures too much of a pass.
Mhm.
And I think it's important to remember these were psychos. These were serious psychos. These are gangsters playing on a world scale rather than some small scale mafia level.
Mhm.
But they're essentially mob bosses.
Yeah. Is there someone that you could point out as an example of the opposite, like somebody who had immense power, but maybe or probably was a good person, or are you just saying like,
No, I mean, I'm sure it happens. That requires more thinking. I'm 100% sure I've run into cases where I was like, oh, this was actually pretty good. This was right now. Let me see if something comes to mind. Um, and also, good person is relative, right? In the
yeah, of
sense
course.
that
Absolutely.
maybe they are like 80% pretty good. Like, for example, if I look at I live in United States. So if I look at US presidents, overwhelmingly, I feel like projectile vomiting. Whether we're talking Republicans or Democrats or anything, I'm just like, ugh, I despise the overwhelming majority. I did a series early on in History on Fire on Theodore Roosevelt. Now, Theodore Roosevelt had his issues, don't get me wrong. He grew up in a white supremacist environment, so some of his early ideas were racist as hell. He mellowed them out over time by a lot, but he definitely started being pretty white supremacist. He never saw a war he didn't like, so little disturbing when it comes to warfare and so on. And these are obviously not small issues, they are big ones.
Yeah.
However, there are so many other things where I can tell by like the guy, from his emphasis on environmental preservation at a time when he wasn't normal at all, to him going from being a white supremacist to really changing dramatically over the course of his life. His anti-corruption, both in government and in private society, and him making really like a crusade against the influence of big business in politics. He put the finger on so many issues where I was like, yeah, that's exactly the right attitude. This is so is he, how do I think he was an amazing guy all around with no issue? No, he definitely had some serious issues even, but overall, there's also a lot that I like.
yeah, that's what I was aiming for. I didn't mean like all around great
Sure.
person. I just meant the opposite of what you were saying, like
Yeah.
psychopath mob bosses,
Yeah.
right? Of course, everybody. Like, I don't think you could find a single person on this planet that I would 100% agree on everything. So yeah,
Sure,
of course.
sure. No, but yeah, like for example, yeah, Roosevelt is a guy in the otherwise awful panorama of US president. He's a guy I like.
Nice.
So this is my second to last question. If you could experience one battle from, let's say, a crow's perspective,
Yeah.
what would it be?
I think probably one of the things that I've studied the most, read the most about, most fascinated with culturally. So much of the stuff I've done has to do with Lakota culture. So
Mhm.
Battle of the Little Bighorn, 1876, is probably high on my list.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. So my last question is going to be a personal one. Uh, what's Professor Daniele Bolelli's guilty pleasure?
Oh man, there's a lot. There's
When do you find the time for a lot? Like
so
with everything else.
I try to keep it in check because of course it's not the healthiest thing in the world, but I love drinking wine. So I'm like, okay, let's keep it in moderation because otherwise it can get out of hand. But wine makes me happy.
Sir,
So
you're
I
from Italy. That
definitely like
makes all the
that,
sense in the world.
right?
When
I,
have you been to Italy the last time?
I go every year. So in
Really?
summer I usually go. Yeah.
Amazing.
And
Amazing.
even this summer, I probably will be there like 6 weeks or something.
Yeah,
So,
we basically just came back from Italy. We went skiing on Dolomiti Super Ski. Yeah,
oh, Dolomiti are so beautiful.
yeah,
My God,
they
Dolomiti
are.
are some of the most incredible
Do
places.
you ski?
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
I
Yeah.
don't go, I haven't traveled back to Italy in winter in a while because that's when I used to go all the time from
Hmm.
the time I was 18 and I moved to US to for like, I don't know, 18 years something. But I think one of the problem, and it was cool because I would travel in winter because it was way cheaper, so it was great. The problem was, man, I would get sick every time. I think is like being in the airplanes and being exposed to a bunch of people when it's flu season and so
Yeah.
on. Is like, I think out of 18 years that I traveled there in winter, I got sick probably 15 times. So I was like, so these days I would love to go back and go like, oh, ski in the Dolomiti, that would be awesome. But I'm like, do I really want to be for 12 hours in a plane with sick people coughing all around me? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
that's
a tricky one.
Yeah, and I just have one last question from my end. I remember, I think maybe it was like your first episode on Joe Rogan.
Uh-huh.
You were discussing your Italian accent,
Yep.
and you were saying like you kind of sort of kept it on purpose, basically, because of interest of women.
Yeah.
So are you still doing it like consciously, or is it does it just not develop on its own, or are you kind of consciously keeping it?
It was more of a joke than anything
Yeah, of
because
course. Well,
I just have a horrible ear for languages. So like when I'm speaking, I think that I'm speaking perfect English with no accent whatsoever. So it's like it's hard for me to change something of which I have so little awareness. And so I
Mhm.
yeah, yeah,
think
of
that's
course.
part of the issue. Now, given that I have so little awareness, and so it would take me a hell of a lot of work to try to change it. I don't even know how successful I would be, but I'm sure it's doable if you really put your mind to it. But then that's where the ladies part came in. It's like, wait, do I want to work like a dog to get rid of something that women in US like? That doesn't sound like a good plan. I don't think that's the best use of my energy.
No, but that's literally like the best accent in the world. Like if I could choose like one accent to have, that's literally like the best
I
one.
think it gives you so much personality. So yeah, definitely keep it. But I just wanted to.
That's why I'm like, if it's my laziness, right? If women like it, I don't have to change it. Great, that's perfect. That's all
No,
I need.
never change that.
It's just interesting to me because for me it's kind of opposite. If you put me in an environment, I will like instinctively start sounding. If I'm listening to too much like American accent, I start sounding American. If I end up like watching a bunch of I don't know British movies or something, then I pick it up instinctively. So it's kind of opposite of how it is for you. So yeah.
That's probably because you have a talent for languages, where you have a talent for you have a good ear. I clearly have a god awful ear because I cannot pick it up at all.
Professor, thank you so much for this. We don't want to spend any more of your time. We know you're in a rush. Like we are very grateful for the time you have spared for us. And like also, I want to let you know when you go to Italy, if you go this year, we go to Italy every summer, like
Awesome.
every
Where do you
single
guys go?
summer. Like we would be, it would be an absolute honor to take you out for that wine at least or anything else.
That
Like
sounds awesome.
that
Where
would
do you
be.
guys go in Italy typically? Which places?
There's a small city. It's right in between Trieste and Venice.
Oh, cool.
It's called La Tisana. There's
Okay.
like it's been like a place where I go for every summer for like past 15 years. My parents have had a
Oh,
boat
nice.
there for the past 15 years. So that's a
Nice.
place I've kept visiting, and that city has become like my second home. Like
Oh,
after
that's awesome.
so much time there, but unfortunately, I never picked up Italian language because they are like most of the people speak German there. I don't know why,
Oh,
but like,
because it's way up north. Yeah, of
yeah,
course.
so
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
think you mentioned somewhere that you go to Milan, or did I?
Yeah, Milan is where I'm from.
Oh.
Typically, where I try to spend the most time is in Tuscany, under Livorno. So it's like maybe a couple of hours from Florence,
yeah.
by the coastline.
Like a couple of
That's where I spend a bunch of time.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, a friend of mine had a wedding, even though they have nothing to do with Italy, but they wanted to have a Tuscany wedding, and we spent like a week there in a wine farm, or how do you call
Oh
it?
man,
One of the most beautiful places I ever went to ever.
yeah,
Like
yeah. No,
I
Tuscany
love
is
it.
awesome. Tuscany I like a lot,
Do
for
you
sure.
like? Do you see yourself like when you actually stop work and everything? Do you see yourself like moving back to Italy, or are you
I
gonna stay in
would,
the U.S.?
In an ideal world, what I would like to do, and hopefully even soon if I'm able to with work and stuff, I would love to spend maybe 6 months. Or maybe even if I have to be here more and I have to be here like 8 months, at least have like 4 months of the year. That would be absolutely ideal because Italy is fantastic place to retire in. It's a
Mm-hmm.
terrible place to work.
Mm-hmm.
There's between the bureaucracy and
Yeah.
there's sort of, so it's not the greatest place to work in, but if you have money coming in from somewhere else or you can work online or you're retired, it's heaven. It's so good.
Yeah, it's like I love the mentality there. Like I remember when I got there the first time, like when I found out like there's a break for from like exactly noon to
yeah,
like
yeah,
1:30. I was like, why is nothing working? Why is and they're like, yeah,
yeah.
well, and then I had like an older Italian lady explain to me like that's because we appreciate family a lot, and this is
Yeah,
the
yeah,
time
of course.
where the whole
Yeah.
family, everybody, doesn't matter. You work in a supermarket, I work in a police station, we all work in different places, but that exact time we all go on a break and we all have lunch together, and
Have
I
lunch
love that.
together. Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
when you realize that's the mentality you want. Like that's the family oriented mentality, which is so
yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, I love it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I want to spend more and more time there for sure. So yeah, you guys let me know. I'm gonna go probably at the end of June or so. I'm gonna be in Italy. So you guys let me know about your movements.
Yeah.
Do you maybe have like a old Italian nonna that can make me like genuine, authentic cannoli?
I'm sure I can get somebody. My grandmas by now are dead, so it's yeah. I'm trying to think.
I would just
I'm
love to
sure I
try
know somebody.
authentic
I'll
cannoli.
think of somebody who can pull it off.
Yeah.
But
Awesome. Professor.
my all-time favorite, though, even more than cannoli, is just tiramisu. Tiramisu
Oh yeah,
is,
of course.
Yeah.
speaking of guilty pleasures, tiramisu, I would just inject it in vein. It's just too good. It's the best thing ever.
Yeah, I bet. Well, thank you so much for the bottom of our hearts for being a guest. This is one more thing you mentioned, and I saw it on like one of the YouTube shorts. You were saying like how your career just took off, kind of sort of by luck when you ended up on Joe Rogan's podcast. So yeah, this is I guess a little bit of you giving back because we are just at the very beginning, and
Yeah,
so
man. I always like I pretty much if somebody has a podcast, they send me a message, they want me to hop on. I'm like, "Oh, of course, what the hell am I gonna say no? It's like that's bullshit. That's to me is like it's just nice to if people are nice enough to be interested, they want to have a chat. Why not? It's always a good idea.
Professor Daniele Bolelli, one of the most amazing human beings on earth. Thank you so much again. Like this was a blast. Thank you
Thank
so
you guys
much.
so much. Thank you.
You too. Have a good one, Professor. Peace. Bye bye.